Well, another year is over, and it's now time to look at the films released over the past year. There have been many great ones, and some not so good ones, and I'm just going to get the low points out of the way quickly. Now, before I start, I just want to say that despite my disappointing and underwhelming feelings towards these movies, it is important to mention that hundreds of talented people worked years and put a ton of effort into bringing these movies to the screen. I may have been unimpressed, but I do think the people behind those all have the potential to make even better films in the future. And I think they will. So with that said, let's start my number 10 pick, a disappointing romance with two actors you would think would have stronger chemistry. The Mountain Between Us. Despite the presence of Kate Winslet and Idris Elba stuck together for the duration of this movie, this survival thriller / love story is a dull escapade that lacks the excitement required for this sort of movie. Their romance is completely unbelievable, and when we get to the steamy love scene, it does not feel earned. The dog had more character development than these two, which is a shame because they are trying their hardest to sell this material. The dialogue is cheesy and would feel more at home in a cheap paperback romance novel. However, what really got on my nerves was the ending, which just keeps going and going and going. I don't know why this is a problem lately of movies not realizing the proper time to end their stories, but I think filmmakers need to be called out on it more. The cinematography captured the size of this situation better than the script, that's for sure. And number 9 is that animated film, well, you know the one. The Emoji Movie. This film has been beaten up so much, and even I have heavily criticized it, to the point I was hoping to see 10 films I disliked more, so I would not have to include it on this list. But, alas, I already went into detail my worst anime movies of 2017 list, but suffice to say, it primarily disappointed me with how little it took advantage of its concept. There is a way to make this movie work, but it just had trouble bringing the heart, the humor, and even the potential satire of this project to life. Despite the quality of the finished film, I don't like people insulting the hard-working artists at Sony Pictures Animation. I've seen artists who worked on this movie saying how much fun they had designing the concept art and animating on the film, and I can believe it. Look up the digital art of book. Some incredible work went into the making of this film, as sadly underwhelming as it was. And that deserves to be acknowledged. I'm done talking about the Emoji Movie at this point, so let's just put it aside and move on. My number 8 pick is an example of two different countries coming together to produce something with surprisingly little entertainment value. The Great Wall. Despite some talented folks from both China and the United States collaborating on this giant epic, this monster movie lacked the B-movie delight that should come from a project like this one. While great expense has been done on the production design and costumes, I found little to be invested in this battle. The problem is how seriously it takes itself, when they should have gone full-on goofy. The monsters themselves were underwhelming, and despite a couple of clever ideas, I never found them all that threatening, and the designs left a lot to be desired. Then we have Matt Damon's role, and I understand he's there so the movie can include a big Hollywood movie star, but his character is largely pointless, and I'm not sure what accent Damon was going for. I understand this is one of those turn-your-brain-off movies, but I was so bored by the proceedings, I could not even do that. My number 7 pick is another animated film, this one with monkeys. Spark, A Space Tale. Again, I already talked about this on my worst anime movies countdown, and this might have worked if the story was not so completely derivative in every way. The Star Wars influence is rather heavy in this, and yes, we also get the tired chosen one trope. But I never found myself caring for any of these simian beings going from one space battle to the next. The villain is weak, the humor goes for obvious and lowest common denominator gags, and the animation is sadly underwhelming. Any possible imagination just doesn't come across in the finished film. It would just be really nice to hear Patrick Stewart's voice in a good animated movie. And number 6 is a comedian who seems to pop up in these lists annually. Sandy Wexler. Unlike a lot of people, I don't like picking on Adam Sandler. I'm even going to say right now how good he is in Noah Baumbach's The Meyerowitz Stories, which you can also watch on Netflix. But his latest comedies just don't impress me, despite the freedom he has of not having to worry about opening weekend box office grosses anymore. I've often mentioned my annoyance at his silly voices, and with Sandy Wexler, there's no reason for him to even have a silly voice, which makes it that much more grating. The movie tries to make us sympathize with his talent manager to the point of having celebrity testimonials, but I just didn't. The jokes are obvious and tired, and this film's 130-minute runtime is excessive. Did I chuckle a couple times? I will confess I did, but that still was not enough to get past how bloated and irritating this was. I sometimes have a controversial pick on this list, and this year it takes the number 5 spot. The Killing of a Sacred Deer. Sometimes you come across a film that is so incredibly nihilistic and grotesque with not much there underneath the surface. This is a movie that seems to have a real distaste for, well, everyone, and there was a grim tone through the entire project that rung hollow. It revolves around a group of terrible people, and then doesn't really explore them beyond how terrible they are. It's not helped by dialogue that is utterly stilted, with performances being just as wooden. I've seen this described as an artistic choice, but if this was not an art house film, I'm not sure certain circles will be as forgiving. Somehow, Raffi Cassidy is more robotic here than in the movie where she played an actual robot. Why should I spend 2 hours watching terrible people do terrible things to each other? And that's why there's something good that came out of watching this movie. It made me appreciate lighthearted movies with big positive outlooks that much more. I would rather watch a film that loves its characters and seeks to bring some brightness to the world. A lot of people are already plenty cynical, and that's not why I go to the movies. This was just an outright bleak and unpleasant experience. My number 4 pick is a film made by a director whose work I really admire, which made the disappointment that much more difficult to process. Monster Trucks. I've greatly enjoyed the works of Chris Wedge, with their vivid imaginations and the incredible ways he uses the computer and teams of artists to bring us to worlds we haven't seen before. With his live-action directing debut, I got none of that, and it leads me to believe this was just a hire-on job. This feels like a 20-year-old script that had been dusted off and then brought to the screen with no changes made. It's trying to go for a boy and his creature story, but I felt no connection between Lucas Till playing a teenager, that's already unbelievable, and the titular truck monster. Creech is an ugly-looking creation that I did not find cute or endearing, though I would be curious to watch the original cut where he looked like something out of John Carpenter's The Thing. The humor does not work, and the attempts at endearment lack the heart required. As the film wore on, I got more and more tired of it. This was a movie concept that came from the mind of a Paramount executive's young son, and maybe it should have been kept as crayon drawings. Number 3 is the latest attempt to give a comedic spin to a television series from decades ago, Baywatch. I can see the comedic potential of a show as infamously cheesy as Baywatch being turned into an R-rated romp. Unfortunately, this wastes that on sophomoric gags and characters that are more obnoxious than charming. Yet, this is a film that somehow makes Dwayne Johnson into an insufferable, charisma-free jerk. I did not even think that was possible. This movie's idea of hilarity is somebody getting his genitals stuck in a beach chair for 5 minutes, and Zac Efron holding up another man's nether regions with Johnson taking a photo. Comedy! I think the few times I did chuckle were pity laughs, because I was waiting desperately for something funny to happen. This thing is almost 2 hours, because the world was demanding a Baywatch movie longer than 90 minutes. Even the expected cameos from David Hasselhoff and Pamela Anderson do absolutely nothing interesting with them. Throw in a standard and cliché plot with drug runners and a dull villain, and I think Efron's character had a point when he said, maybe the police should be handling this. My number 2 pick is the 5th entry in a franchise with the quality steadily dropping. Transformers: The Last Knight. Now, I know it's cliched at this point to rag about the Transformers movies. To be honest, I'm pretty much indifferent towards them. At least they know they're stupid robot fighting movies that exist with a side interest of selling toys. I even thought Age of Extinction was the best one, which I know is not saying much. But this 5th one took the running and screaming and exploding to a new level of irritating. These movies have pretty much lost the plot at this point. There's no story here. It's just Mark Wahlberg, Anthony Hopkins, the latest model Michael Bay is attracted to, and robots world-hopping for a monumentally long amount of time. There's so much going on, and so little I care about. The constantly changing aspect ratios drove me bonkers, and Hopkins' robot butler was even more annoying than Sam Witwicky's parents. I did not even know that was possible. I know there are people who hold great affection for these toys, and they also don't like these movies. However, I just find the Transformers to be boring. Will the director of Kubo and the Two Strings make them interesting in the upcoming Bumblebee spin-off movie? I certainly hope so. And my number 1 least favorite movie of 2017 is The Dark Tower. I've never read Stephen King's Gunslinger books, but even I could tell this was butchered. This feels like watching 5-minute snippets of a long-running television series that have been edited together in a manner that's completely incoherent. As soon as I was getting a tiny bit interested in what was going on, we just jumped to a new scene. And it's like this for 90 minutes, resulting in a rather confused mess. And then expositional dialogue is thrown in to patch it all together, and even then I was just bored. The tone is all over the map, going from gritty western to last action hero. It even manages to suck the charm out of Idris Elba and Matthew McConaughey. I did not care about the main boy, and then there's the attempt to tie it into other Stephen King stories. I know that's common in the books, but in an age of cinematic universes, it just distracted me because of how the film rights to the books are all at different studios. This is a movie where a line of dialogue instantly made me flash back to a joke from The Simpsons. That's not a good thing. At least we got It a month later, and better movies tomorrow, as I'll count down my favorite films of 2017. See you then.